From criminal minds to mind hunters and other sources of entertainment, the public has always had a fascination with serial killers. Serial killers tend to attract the public's attention quite often. Many people are morbidly drawn to the violence of serial killers because they cannot understand them and they feel compelled to. Not only that, but serial killers also have a versatile appeal for the public, similar to monster movies, and they also have a euphoric and adrenaline rush, and with that, they spark more curiosity. As humans, curiosity tends to get the best of us, quite often. So that begs the question, why do serial killers become serial killers? Well, research has shown an overwhelming amount of factors that play into the development of a serial killer. Many serial killers are survivors of childhood trauma, physical or sexual abuse, family dysfunction, emotional or distant parents. Trauma tends to be and is the single reoccurring factor in most serial killers. Kieran Haynes of Loyola Marymount University touches base with the cycle of trauma on serial killers in his piece, An Exploration of Trauma and Markers in the Artwork of a Serial Killer. Haynes refers to the well-known case study of serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. Haynes states that in Jeffrey Dahmer's case, that there is a clinical pattern to the trauma both in his family and in his committed murders. Haynes discusses serial killer Lee Lucas's case as well. He grew up with a lifestyle with his parents. They state that Lucas had suffered the shame of a societal stigma of his mother's prostitution and his father's physical deformity. He attempted to mitigate the societal stigma of his killings by childhood victimization. His parents' traumatic experiences contributed to their criminal lifestyle, which affected the development of Henry Lee Lucas's, who continued the cycle by traumatizing his victims. The experience of this sort of trauma can really impact a person, but only some people will take that trauma and continue the cycle in their own negative way. Those few people are serial killers. While trauma plays a big factor into what makes a serial killer, that is not the only factor. For instance, we hear the term psychopath and instinctually our guard goes up. In today's media and society, they portray all psychopaths as cold-blooded serial killers. But in reality, 1 in 150 people are psychopaths. So, if they're not all uncommon and cold-blooded killers, what is a psychopath? A psychopath is someone who is very grandiose and lacks sympathy and empathy. The trick is to deliberately understand the difference of someone who is a psychopath and someone who is a cold-blooded serial killer. Most people are not aware that not all serial killers are psychopaths. More so, serial killers may possess some or many of the traits that are consistent with psychopathy. The psychopaths that do commit serial murder do not value human life and are extremely callous in their interactions with their victims. Student Keel, while at the University of British Columbia, conducted a study on the brains of psychopaths. Keel and his colleagues conducted over 5,000 scans of inmates in Canada and in the United States. What they found was that the orbital frontal cortex, which is the part of your brain right in behind your eyes, and the amygdala, which is deep inside your brain, and up here you can see the amygdala is in the middle, but in the deeper part of your brain, and at the top you can see where the red parts are. That is where the frontal orbital lobe is. Now you have to understand that when they took a look at these brains, they could see that they don't work properly. They had to come to the conclusion that in these regions of a psychopath's brain, they are dysfunctional. Mind you, these two regions of the brains are responsible for feelings of remorse, empathy, and fear. Now you have to factor in psychopathy into a serial killer and now understand that since they have legitimately fear of nothing, they see no worry in their crimes. But then again, not all psychopaths are serial killers. Again, not all psychopaths become serial killers, and not all people who have experienced the factors that may contribute to serial killers become serial killers. From the early age of 5, people can develop fantasies, but it is within that person and their choices whether or not to later act on these fantasies. Serial killers are still human, and they know right from wrong. There are factors that may have been inflicted upon them from trauma to psychopathy, but it's how they react and conform that shapes them into whether or not they will become a contributing member of society or a cold-blooded serial killer.